blessed morning to you. The program is The Dailies, where we look at happenings in Nigeria from our Nigerian newspaper at front pages. Quite a number of interesting stories on the paper. As we will recorded yesterday, Aston federal government had a meeting concerning the looming strike, but then that meeting ended in a deadlock, which they are hoping to resume talks again by 6th of September. So all fingers are crossed concerning whether or not ASU will embark on the strike that they have said they will embark on. I am Sarah Elisha Dasham. Do well to drop your comment and your views on Facebook as well as on YouTube. I'll be doing the program alongside Prudence Booker. Good morning, Prudence.
Good morning, Sarah.
All right, we shall go through the papers, starting with the Daily Sun newspaper.
All right, on the Daily Sun newspaper, we have the lead story saying presidency wants non-state actors, and the writer reads, says they will face consequences of actions. Says they will face consequences of actions. And we also have a security invitation, NLT president to storm police headquarters with national officers and others, labor to embark on peaceful prayer procession. That will be found on page 6. And Bode George tells Atiku you can only contest in 2031, not 2027. You can find the details of that story on page 28. And we have 16 burned to death, 5 injured on Ondo Road crash, and scores injured as 2 BRT buses collide in Lagos. That's a sad one here. And we also have a story that reads, over 31 million Nigerians facing acute food crisis, says government. And article hits federal government over under 18 education policy, banning students from WASSCE and NECO will lead to capital flight, says Don, and XPTA chair backs government. And the downside story says Echo Disco disconnects Unilag over electricity bill. Echo Disco disconnects Unilag over electricity bill. You can find details of that on page 26. And the topmost story says federal government on the strike, actually. Federal government and ASU meeting deadlocked, reconvenes September 6th. You can find details of that on page 6. And that's it on the Daily Sun newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at another paper, which is the Nigerian News Direct, where we have NIN SIM linkage. September 14, 2024 is final deadline for compliance. This is a report coming from the NCC. As well on the strike, where we have federal government and NASU meeting inconclusive, adjourned till September 6, detail found on page 2. On 2027 election, postpone your presidential aspiration till 2031, Bode George tells Atiku. NIPCO Gas NGML commissions over 100 MMSCFD capacity gas distribution in Lekki. Lagos to resume operation of Oje Eco food discount market September 1st, which happens to be on Sunday. How Nigerians spend $28.65 billion on foreign education in 10 years. And we've been having this report coming in once in a while to tell us how much we're spending and the need for the government to look into the educational sector to do something so that we can have all of this revenue rather than going outside the country, remaining within. You can find out on page 2. We have this picture story. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Daily Times, we have supporting Nigeria's democracy, best way to respond to Nigeria's aspiration. That is from the European Union. And we have EFCC warning lawyers against violating anti-money laundering rules. And you can find the details of that on page 9. And Ajero's summon, NLC directs members to occupy police headquarters nationwide today. You can do well to check that story out. And on insecurity, bandits, kidnappers, others will face consequences for their actions, coming from President Tinubu. The big story says, Body George to Atiku, you can't be president in 2027. The rider reads, says PDP will field a southerner as presidential candidate in 2027, and talking about 2027 insensitive, Atiku's spokesperson replies Body George. On the strike, federal government ASU reached compromise to reconvene September 6th, and the education minister, that's the rider, education minister constitutes implementation monitoring committee of needs assessment intervention fund. And the story at the downside of the paper says, alleged terrorism, DIA gets court order to detain policeman, 19 others for 30 days. Alleged terrorism, DIA gets court order to detain policeman, 19 others for 30 days. Details of that can be found on page 11. Do well to check the papers, and there's also a picture story. So just do well to check the papers for any of this information that you would want to.
All right, let's take a look at this day newspaper. And on this day, whistleblowing policy, federal government recovers over 83 billion naira, $609 million, 5.4 million euros in 6 years. With the writer here saying Tinubu to represent the bill to National Assembly. You can do well to find detail of that story on page 17 of the paper. Bankers Committee complete restoration of National Theatre. As well, we have Nigeria's defense chief visit Niger Republic to discuss security collaboration. Data found on page 33. Look is wrong. We can screen confirm acting. I take that story again. Duke is wrong. We can screen confirm acting Chief Justice of Nigeria after swearing in, says the Senate. You can do well to find detail of that on the front page as well as on page 17. And here we have a big story here. NEPC, non-oil export yield $2.7 billion at half year. CBN survey reveals businesses anticipate lower inflation compared to households. Says rising costs push Nigerians into debt amid optimism. You can find that in the paper. We have the picture story meeting with the CBN governor, and this happened yesterday in Abuja. You can do well to get the paper and read more detail of any of the story. That's quite of interest to you.
On the first news, we have Kwara cleric's wife gives birth to 11 babies. I find that quite interesting. 11 babies. We congratulate her. And then we have a story of 7,000 students face deportation, protest erupts in Canada. Take that again, 70,000 students face deportation and protest erupts in Canada. Then we have police arrest 94 Shiites following Abuja violence. That story was on the papers yesterday, but you can still read, grab First News to get the details of this story. And Interpol strikes major blow against black acts. 300 arrested in global cybercrime crackdown. And you have Atiku versus George. Call for leadership change meets defiant response. You also have 4 Nigerians sentenced in UK for running marriage certificate scam. 4 Nigerians sentenced in UK for running marriage certificate scam. And the bold story reads, desperate rescue mission. Gobir residents confront bandits to free 150 kidnapped victims. Gobir residents confront bandits to free 150 kidnapped victims. And you have the rider reading, recover slain district head. And we have downside the paper, federal government and ASU talks show promise. Meeting to avert strike continues September 6th. Federal government ASU talks show promise. Meeting to avert strike continues September 6th. And you have NCC sets September 14th deadline for mandatory SIM and NIN linkage. And that's it on the first news. Do go ahead and grab one to get more information.
All right, let's take a look at New Telegraph newspaper. The first half of 2024, federal government earnings from non-oil export hit $2.7 billion, data found on the front page and in the paper. Fuel crisis, landing cost of diesel rises to 1,136 naira 97 kobo per liter. More data found on page 7 on New Telegraph newspaper. On 2027, emulate Biden. Bode Judge tells Atiku says Nigerians watching for PDP to rescue them with a southern and ask the leader. You can read the detail of that on page 2. Alleged terrorism financing, NLC to storm the headquarters, police headquarters as police grill Ajero. You can do well to read that on page 2 and 28. Depot owner self-read above NNPCL Limited template. This is a source saying that. As well, custom generate 3.3 billion naira in 2 months. Detailed on page 6 and 29. And the bold story on the paper, digital security, NCC insists on September 14 deadline for NIN SIM linkage. Uncover cases of individuals with over 100,000 SIM cards, 153 million SIMs successfully linked. So this is more like a reminder for those who are yet to link their NIN with their SIM card. Please do well so you can avoid being blocked and then your SIM card will be destroyed. Please do well to adhere to the warning. You have about 2 weeks or so to the deadline. And on the issue of the strike for ASU, where we have federal government and ASU reached compromise to reconvene September 6th. And on Rivers crisis, Monarch allegedly barred non-Wiki supporters from the palace, and this is really not right. You are a leader for both, so we hope that the Monarchs would not do such so that we don't have crisis coming up on that state. ABGA crisis revisit, Nijoko recognition as chairman, Ezekwome tells INEC. You can find that on page 26. Nigerians non-oil export record 6.26% growth, hit $2.7 billion. The report here is coming from the NEPC. As well, federal government recovers 83.01 billion naira via whistleblowers. Tinubu reactivate the policy, send the bill to the National Assembly. Nigeria spent $87.35 billion on foreign education, PTA, in 10 years. This is a report. And as well, we have a study that says ultrasound device shows promise for treating chronic pain. Ultrasound device shows promise for treating chronic pain. You can read more on that study on page 26 of New Telegraph, and that's all a New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, we have NLC plans mass procession as Ajero honors police invitation today. Details can be found on page 12. And Atiku body judge disagree over 2027 presidential ambition. Details on page 29. And the bold story reads, government plans evacuation comes as flood hits 28 states. Flooding affects 133 local governments and 526,703 persons. Tinubu promises aid. And you have a picture story that reads, Bankers Committee completes restoration of National Theatre. You can do well to grab a copy of the Punch newspaper to get details of the story and more.
Right. On the Nation newspaper, where we have Ajero NLC direct members to converge on the promise on the police command. NLC direct members to converge on police commands. Data found in the paper. Foreign investors pump 800 billion naira into burial subsector. Atiku should wait till 2031 to run, says Bode Judge. Why Hajj Commission must be reformed by the presidency. As well, you can see detail of what's happening on the Edo 2024 on pages 5 of the Nation newspaper. Police officer, 19 others held for terrorism. How ASP and others suspects ape Boko Haram bandit Iswa by DIA. You can find detail of that in the paper, and that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On the Daily News Hub, you have Interpol arrests 300 Black Axe cult members. And the bold story reads 2027 presidency, Body George mocks Atiku, says step aside until 2031. Urges him to allow younger generation to lead. The writer reads, I am not preoccupied with 2027 presidency, Atiku replies, George. Then we have the story of how UK Lagos visa application center ripped off my family from a British Nigerian. The writer reads, demands refund within 7 days of 157,750 naira, allegedly collected fraudulently from his wife, and vows to lodge formal complaints against British authorities. An applicant was appropriately charged for services rendered, says center official. We also have a story that reads how bank offered me 100 billion naira loan, wanted repayment through crusades proceed. By a pastor. I read that again. How bank offered me 1 billion naira loan, wanted repayment through crusade proceeds. And we have NCC announcing a final deadline of NIN SIM linkage compliance. And you have the federal government reveals identity of woman threatening to kill Yoruba Bini people in Canada, as Ohaneze condemns video. And we have on alleged terrorism, DIA gets court order to detain police. ASP, take that again. DIA gets court order to detain police ASP, 19 others for 30 days. And Kwara cleric's wife delivers 11 babies, husband seeks help. On monkeypox, we have Ogun records 151 suspected monkeypox cases, and we have police arrests naval officer for killing ex-naval chief's son in Abuja. And there's also protests erupt around across Canada as 70,000 international students face deportation. Protests erupt around Canada as 70,000 international students face deportation. And lastly, on the Daily News Hub, you have ASU federal government meeting shifted till September 6th. And that's it on the Daily News Hub newspaper. Do well to grab a copy and get details for yourself.
You know, Prudence, I know we've seen it on most of our paper, ranging from how much we spend to study abroad and the number of students that are being presently facing deportation. Of course, I know not all of them are Nigerians,
Yes.
but definitely there are Nigerians that are part of those as well. And then looking at the fact that as well, we're seeing that as we say, they will go on strike if the government do not listen to some of their leads. And some of the demands way back, we can actually trace it way back 2009. When
Yes.
those agreements were made, certain amount that were meant to be given to the school to keep it running. And then I think for almost as long as they can remember, that money only came in once, and that was in 2013 or 15 precisely. Now, imagine if our country, Nigeria, will be able to look into revamping, restructuring, renovating certain things in our educational sector, because when you look at that ministry, that is a ministry that needs so much of attention to be given to it.
True.
We keep saying the fact that for any country to grow, for development, there is a need for the educational sector to be given attention. I'm not just talking about schooling, because education is more than the four corners of school. We learn every day. But then, for you to have the basic knowledge, you definitely need to go through a school. And that is why there is a need for the federal government to pay attention to it. So just imagine if we have all that is needed. Of course, maybe you just go abroad because you just needed maybe an added knowledge of one or two things, but not because your own educational system in your own country is failing. Most of the students we see leaving the shores of Nigeria to school abroad is because of the system of schooling here in the country.
True.
And now, there were cases where we had some of them complaining because the allowances are supposed to be coming from the federal government. It's not coming in as expected. I know that not every student that's schooling abroad is on scholarship.
True.
So definitely there's a need for a little stipend coming from the federal government to keep them moving. We could cast our mind back to what happened during the Russia-Ukraine. We know how the students that are schooling in Ukraine, the tough time they went through before they were able to leave the country to come back home. So just imagine if the system here was working. Would there be a need for them to go there? We're going to talk about students that are schooling in Sudan, and a number of Nigerians were wondering, of all countries, Sudan. Not to look down on the country, but looking at the fact that we are the giant of Africa. It's expected that we have more international students trooping into the country here in Nigeria to school. There was a time it was that way, where you can trace it back from our primary school, that you would school with a little of some of those foreign students. But right now, you barely see
Like
them,
reverses
very,
the
very
case.
few,
Yeah.
except for those high-class schools. That is where you get to meet them. Now, what is this telling us as a country? That we need to go back and check what is wrong. And I think this is the reason why ASU is even bringing up certain things. You go to some of our tertiary institutions, it looks like a glorified secondary school. Our lecturers are not well taken care of. The classroom cannot accommodate the number of students that are being given admission yearly. And then you can go on and on. The basic thing that school needs is not even there. There's even a threat that students that will be resuming school start paying 80,000 naira for electricity bill. And you begin to wonder, the things that are even on your receipt already, students are complaining, not to talk about added tuition again concerning the issue of electricity. So looking at this, it really beats my heart, because if it will get to the point where some students have to go through deportation, and then when we could actually do something to make sure that our own educational system here is working. So I think this is more like a way to draw the attention of the government in case they have neglected that sector and they are not giving it the needed attention, for them to wake up and do the needed.
Exactly. It is really desperately needed, and I'm intentional about using the word desperate, because a lot of times you find that Nigerians leave the country just because they want to have better education, and you're not satisfied with what you're getting here in the country. We really need to our education sector really needs to be revisited. You have the you even have the primary schools with very poor structures, and this is basic education where you have very small children, little children actually, in poor conditioned classrooms.
True.
And it's really heartbreaking. You go to some of these schools and it's heartbreaking that you find students in that kind of condition. How is learning even going to be smooth? So the whole education sector really needs to be revisited, so we don't have a lot of issues of people going out and still facing deportation, but people will be able to go to school, and children will be able to go to school close to their parents and being carefully watched. I think that will go a great way, a long way, and it will also attract foreign students. As you mentioned earlier, it's disheartening that you go to the institutions in Nigeria and you rarely find foreign students, and we are supposed to be the giants of Africa, aren't we? So it should really be visited.
All right, let's take a look at another paper, I think, which will happen to be the Guardian newspaper. The big story on there says, on the NIN-SIM linkage and national security, fresh anxiety as federal government disconnect 50 million unlinked SIM September 14. A reputation again, more like a warning. Please do well to link your SIM card with your NIN number. As well, we have concerns as Abuja photographer spent 10 months in detention over international insults. You can read that on page 8. Reps member won Lagos LP against illegal Congress and others. You can find that on page 5. Beyond the factor, we have unveiling violence in Nigerian peaceful presidential election. More detail found on page 4. Kaduna Bauchi order residents to vacate flood-prone areas, where we're seeing about 28 states will be affected. Therefore, there is a need that if you're living around a flood-prone area, for you to vacate as soon as possible. Still on the Guardian newspaper, Criminal Justice Act ineffective 7 years after. NBA laments. Afenifere seek regional NYSC enforcement of Terrorism Prohibition Act. As well, the PDP crisis, Bode George advises Atiku to contest presidency in 2031 at 85, and of course he'll be too old to rule Nigeria. If you are canvassing or pushing for the fact that it should be Nigeria should be ruled by a younger person, I think it will really be right that if you are advising him not to contest in 2027, he should as well not contest at all. I think that is the best way, because we're looking at pushing it to the southerners, because there have been this advocacy coming from Nigerians, the fact that we should have it more like zoned to various areas for them to have, a feel of what it feels like to rule the country, so that it doesn't look like another part of the country is more Nigerian than the other. I think that is what this concern is all about. So you can read more detail of that on page 8. Still on the Guardian newspaper, currency in circulation hits 4 trillion naira, defies CBN's monetary tightening measures. That's the business news you can find on page 15. NLC threatened indefinite strike as Ajero honors police invitation. You can read that on page 3, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper. But before I take the next paper, Prudence, I'd like us to take a break just to let our viewers go through some of the stories, what you feel about Bode George singing to Atiku, as well as how much we're spending schooling abroad. We're seeing that talks between the federal government and ASU, it seems there will be a compromise, but then just not to be quick to pass the judgment, we'll wait until next week, where they will be reconvening again to discuss what will be the next way forward. As well, NLC talking about the fact that they'll be storming the police command to actually, or they might even go on a peaceful prayer walk just to ask for the, whatever seems to be the issue concerning their chairman. So many other stories on the paper, which we would love to have your own views about it. So do well to drop that on Facebook. When we come back, we'll continue the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
The mandate of reaching out to the world with the message of salvation and truth is a zeal that has consumed us. Equa Television International is live 247, reaching out to the unreached with undiluted message of hope through its programming.
You can be part of what God is using us to do by praying for Equa TV and supporting Equa TV. Keep watching Equa Television International.
We are a Christian station with the driving force and mandate to reach out to the world with the gospel of salvation and truth through programming and soul-lifting events.
You can join on this mandate. Let's spread the gospel of truth and salvation to the world. Pray for Equa Television. Support Equa Television. Keep watching Equa Television.
Sharing with the world the message of truth to help people come to the saving knowledge of our Lord and King, Jesus Christ, as well as find solace in Him.
From sermon, theology, undiluted biblical principles to Christian music and drama that aims to give hope, peace, strength, happiness, as well as strengthen the faith of those who diligently seek Jesus Christ.
welcome back. Still at the dailies, we have been looking at a number of stories on the paper from where we are having the NCC talking about the fact that by September 14 will be the deadline for those who are yet to link their NIN to their SIM card. So it's important that if you're yet to do that, please do well to link your NIN to your SIM card, as well as we're looking at what Body George is saying to the former Vice President Atiku, the fact that he should not contest for the presidency or the presidential election 2027, but wait for 2031, as he is hoping that a younger generation should be in, the hands of affairs, talking about leadership, as well as we're seeing what's happening concerning Nigeria's invitation to police. And then we have other stories on the paper. Arrest of shites that caused trouble in Abuja during the weekend last week. So quite a number of stories for you to look into. Drop your comment and your views concerning that. I still have Prudence with me. Thank you so much, Prudence.
Thank you.
All right, please take us through the next paper we have on for today.
All right, so the next paper is Nigerian Tribune, and you have federal government and ASU meets to reconvene September 6th, agree on modalities to address lecturers' demands. Details on page 30. And you have NCC uncovers individuals possessing over 100,000 SIM cards and sets September 14th as final deadline for NIN SIM linkage. And what Adeleke is doing in power sector, digital economy, and others. This is from a spokesman, and details can be found on page 13. And you have a story, federal government to give legal backing to whistleblowing policy. Edon says. Details can be found on page 15. I beg your pardon. And make laws to give effect to Supreme Court's judgment on local government financial autonomy. Izinu tells National Assembly. You can find details of that story on page 19. And the bold story reads, Nigerians perplexed under Tinubu's government. I take that again, Nigerians perplexed under Tinubu's government. This is from Afenifere, and you can find the writer reading laments crippling hunger and runaway inflation and unremitting insecurity and false profile waste of resources, and raises alarm over harassment of media and reiterates call for implementation of Oresanye report. You can find details of this story on page 4. 4 Nigerians jailed for forgery. Take that again. 4 Nigerians jailed for forging more than 2,000 marriage documents for Nigerians in UK. 4 Nigerians jailed for forging more than 2,000 marriage documents for Nigerians in UK. You can find details on page 6. And police arrest naval officers for killing ex-naval chief's son in Abuja. Also on page 6. And you also have 16 burnt to death on Ore Benin Expressway. 16 burnt to death on Ore Benin Expressway. Also found on page 6. You have NLC to storm police headquarters with Ajero, and workers directed to proceed on indefinite strike if he is detained. Details of this story is on page 19, and that's it on the Nigerian Tribune.
On the Metrics newspaper, Nigerian export value surges to $2.7 billion in the first half of 2024 as Malaysia, Netherlands, Brazil top destinations. You can read details of that on the front page and continue on page 3. For sport lovers, UEFA Champions League 2024-2025, a new era begins. So you can follow up that on page 20. Tension as Ajero honors police invitation today. National officers, State Council affiliated union on standby to storm the police headquarters, State's command. NCC mandate telecommunications to complete NIN SIM linkage by September 14. Federal government unveils identity of woman threatening to kill Yorubas Benis in Canada. The big story 2027 why Atiku cannot contest presidency coming from Bode Judge. What is he looking for in public office as an Autogerian? What is he looking for in public office as an Autogerian? You can find that on page inside the paper, page 2. He should act like Biden, allow younger generation to run. My concerns are not about 2027. My concern is about 2024. This is coming from Atiku himself. Ask judge to advise Tinubu to reassess his ill-advised policies. You can read all that on page 2. Atiku condemns federal government policy to restrict varsity admission to 18 years. You can find that on page 9. And on the strike, federal government ASU to continue meeting September 6. Discipline Milayi to send strong message. PDP coalition tells Ikimi committee. You can find that on page 3. And for those who are into the entertainment industry, you can do out read that as well on page 19. We have a picture story here, reward for meritocracy. You can find detail where we can see the First Lady together with other top ranks officials of the police in her office on Wednesday, which happens to be yesterday. And that's all a Metrics newspaper.
On the leadership newspaper, we have Abuja Industrial Park to employ 40,000 youths by Wike. Abuja Industrial Park to employ 40,000 youths. That's on page 16. And federal government plans legal framework to protect whistleblowers. You can find details on page 25. The bold story reads, NYSC rejects HND graduates at orientation camps. NYSC rejects HND graduates at orientation camps and demands industrial training certificate, and potential core members stranded as officials halt screening. Details of this story can be found on page 4. Then we have federal government and ASU move to avert strike, resumes talks. Details on page 7. And you have shippers cancelled to end dollar charges at seaports. Man cries for help as wife gives birth to 11 babies. And I know from experience that one baby is really hard. So you can imagine how he's really struggling with that. Stakeholders seek review of NACON Act. Stakeholders seek review of NACON Act. Details on page 4. And Kano government closes MDA's account on page 15. And we have flood washes over cemetery in Zaria. You can find details of this and more on the leadership newspaper.
Alright, let's take a look at the independent newspaper. NCC announces final deadline for NIN-SIM linkage compliance. Plateau Assembly reduces elected local government officials' tenure to 2 years. You can do out to read detail of that, and this is in because we know there was a ruling that was given. So here we're seeing they are reducing elected local government officials' tenure to 2 years. You can do out to read detail of why they did that and how it will go on. And the big story on presidency, if you must contest, wait till 2031, Bode Judge tells Atiku, says the Southerner must occupy the position till 2031. You can't talk of 2027, 2023 has not benefited yet. Atiku's aide is replying. You can find that on page 29. Kano implements single central revenue account for MDAs. As well on local government fiscal autonomy, SOU legal luminary flays National Assembly over Supreme Court judgment. Finch rating sounds alarm on monkeypox fiscal threats to Nigeria and others. And coming from Nikon, presidency decries financial impropriety of religious institutions. Governor Oti conveys Labour Party stakeholders meeting September 4th. And we have Nugasa tax presidency on level playing field on crude oil sales. 16 burnt in road crash in Edo State. We send our condolences to the families that were being involved. You can do well to read that on page 6. To avert ASU strike, federal government raises committee to review union's demand. Meeting meets union September 6th after deadlock meeting. Meets union September 6th after deadlock meeting. And as well, downside of the paper, Tinubu appoints Akinde Ozokpala to board of BOI. That's the Bank of Industry. You can read that on page 6. We have the picture story. This is concerning the UBA holdings. You can do well to get the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Vanguard newspaper, you have on WAEC, National Assembly wades into age controversy, and article says it is archaic, and federal government acting like military regime, and federal government's declaration unacceptable and draconian, says CSOs, and it will lead to capital flight. That's done in response to that, and we'll subject it to public hearing from the Senate, and we haven't been briefed on the matter, and that is the reps responding to that. Upside the paper, we have energy crisis. Marketers seek diesel price reduction to 700 naira per litre. And NCC gives September 14 final deadline for NRN same linkage compliance. Details on page 13. You have insecurity, bandits, kidnappers, and others should be exterminated. That's from President Tinubu. And on alleged terrorism financing, we have NLC President honors police invitation today. You also have Interpol arrest over 30, take that again, Interpol arrest over 300 black, take that again. Interpol arrests over 300 members of Black Axe criminal group. And we have South African billionaire John Rupert overtakes Dangote as Africa's richest man. And you also have Olu Fasan saying the futility of Tinubu's statist and cooperationist economic council. And we also have a story on sports for sports lovers. Paris 2024 Paralympic Games, Team Nigeria set to mine gold. And that is it on Vanguard newspaper. Do well to grab a copy and get more information.
Right on Blueprint newspaper, with 96% compliance, NCC fixed September 14 deadline for NIN SIM linkage. 40,000 direct jobs to be created from Ado Industrial Park, coming from the FCT Minister Wike. First Bank, Zenith Bank, UBA lead sector recovery after April downturn. For AFCON 2025, I hope he's treated well. Ron congratulates Labadia. You can find that on page 32. Federal government recovers 83 billion naira as Tinubu set to represent whistleblowing bill. Policy will safeguard nation's resources, not witch hunt anybody, coming from the finance minister, Edu. You can read detail on the front page and on page 8. Coming from Kwara State, where we're still having the man complaining, or rather crying for help concerning his wife giving birth to 11 babies. The big story for the paper, Body Joshua Atiku perish of 2027 ambition, emulate John Biden. My preoccupation not 2027 but plight of Nigerians, coming from the ex-VP. VONDG to Cross River government. Let's partner to tell Nigerian story. As well, 16 killed in Ondo auto crash. National Hospital lost a 17% workforce to brain drain. We've been seeing the issue of health personnel leaving the country. You can read that on page 11. The last story, it's a Jeros Day with police. NLC calls for prayer procession. can read that on page 6, and that's all on Blueprint newspaper.
On the Punch Sports Extra, you have Chelsea submits official bid for Osimhen, and Lukman prefers PSG to Arsenal. We have Oshola scores in first Barca face-off. And you also have Nigerian stacks Labadia with World Cup ticket. And you also have Liverpool set to finalize Chisier's signing. And we have dream debut goal thrills all more. Trump takes incredible golf claim, and Joshua Anthony versus debut. Organizers seek increase in Wembley capacity. We also have Atanda Musa pledges table tennis development. We have mixed on AFCON 2025 qualifiers. Mixed reaction trails Eagles list. Nigerians kick against Osimhen inclusion. Disar Ejoke omission. We also have US Open. Sina Alvarez survives early scares. And Adesanya's coach hints at 2024 return. And we also have Ancelotti downplays Mbappe's slow start. And that's it on the Sporting Sun Extra. For sport lovers, do well to grab a copy and get more information.
All right, let's take a look at the Business Day newspaper. Etu Danjuma acquire Notori Chemical for $150 million, with a commentary here saying Dangote Refinery calling on all compatriots. You can find out on page 31. Countdown to Port Harcourt Refinery opening, 3 days to go. And we have rising remittance reserve failed to shore up Naira. And we have fake rate cuts to boost Nigerians' capital inflow. You can read what's happening over there on page 31. And that's all on Business Day newspaper.
All right, on the Sporting Sun, we also have Ugarte lands in England to complete Man U's medical. Take that again. Ugarte lands in England to complete Manchester United medical. We have Napoli fans go wild as Lukaku arrives for medical. And we have Bulgarian footballer dies days after collapsing during match. We have Manchester United haggling over, take that again, Manchester United haggling with Chelsea over sterling terms. And we have Abraham close to shock, AC Milan move for 8.4 million euros. And we have Ronaldo nets 899th career goal. We also have Okafor facing Switzerland snob as rift with coach continues. The bold story reads, Raw rates new Super Eagles coach high. Says, I hope he is well treated by the Nigerian Football Federation and Nigerian fans. We have Chelsea in deadline day talks with Osimhen, and we have Ndidi scores 7th goal in Leicester City. Take that again, Ndidi scores 7th goal as Leicester City's player. And we have Efe Ambrose gets glowing send-off at Bury. And we have Al-Kadesh offers Benikar 15 million euros per year. All right. So we have Mayweather, Tiger sued for failing to pay for $4 worth of jewelry. $4 worth of jewelry. We also have Mario, what Arsenal can expect from me. That's Mario telling Arsenal fans and Arsenal as well what Arsenal can expect from me. We have Ancotti tells Jesus to leave club publicly. And Kelty tells Jesus to leave club publicly. And we have Manchester United to rival Chelsea for Ivan Toney deal. And That's it on the Sporting Sun newspaper. Do well to grab a copy and get more information.
All right. Thank you so much, Prudence, for doing this with me.
Thank you.
Thank you to our viewers and supporters. This is how far we can go on the program, The Dailies. We hope you join us again tomorrow as we go through the papers together. Do have a great day ahead.